Hello, hello. Hey, everyone. Super excited to be here on Friday here in Sydney and Thursday in the US. I'm joined here by Ben from Webflow team, and we're going to have a really awesome session around building a game in Webflow today using BuildShip. Hey, Ben, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for making time. I think we have like a lot of people in the community asking about this sessions particularly for a while, so it's great to finally have you live. And yeah, you want to give a quick introduction about yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Ben. I'm a technical architect at Webflow. I've been at Webflow for 6 years now. So a little while, but I've been actually building with Webflow for a lot longer, like I think 11 years at this point.
Oh,
But been building for the web even longer than that. I got my start writing code, and so just enjoy building things and especially pushing Webflow to its limits. And really excited to talk about BuildShip and Webflow today.
yeah. How long has Webflow been in? I think we launched more than 11 years ago, clearly. When was it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's officially like I'm going to get in trouble for not knowing. I think it's like 12 years ago. So
Yeah,
it was probably around for about a year before I got in and started using it. But great platform, and
yeah.
um, just love building with it.
Yeah, and I like how web was evolved. Like I think beyond the website building use case, people are using it for complete app building and also like logged in pages and whatnot. So there are a lot of different amazing templates out there for people to get started fast. And I like that experience of like starting with a template. And so today we actually have built something that is more geared towards an app or AI app kind of experience on Webflow. And quick background and introduction about BuildShip for those who are not aware of it. Basically, BuildShip allows you to build AI workflows, backend tasks, and workflows that can gear towards your use cases, be it like a basic workflow that tackles something, or even like towards agent kind of use cases. So today we have that game building experience. So I think most people are aware of this game Who Done It, or like Who's the Murderer or Detective kind of game, where you can select the theme. Maybe this is a game you play with your team and colleagues, and you can give a theme, and then it kind of brings up the whole gameplay for you. So let's dive right in actually, so people can see it instead of us just sharing it. So this is available as a clonable on Webflow, so people can, we'll share this link on the chat. Um, and also in the chat, if folks want to share where you're tuning in from, and what if you have any questions, we'll address those later in the session. So this clonable, it's fully available for you to play around. It comes built in with the API on BuildShip already ready to go. We'll also have a workflow on BuildShip that is paired with this as available as a clonable, so you can try that out as well. So let's give this a spin. Let's go to this game. Um, and let's give it a theme. So in trying out Harry Potter a lot as a theme, let's try that. So what this does is, behind the hood, as it's preparing the game, a bunch of things are happening. So it's actually going to build ship via this API and creating this whole game theme, where it's not just creating the story with OpenAI, but also coming up with suspects, making it visual by creating images for the suspects, a whole background image. It even creates audio, but we are not going to go into that part today. It kind of does all these kind of things and gives like a packaged response that, as you can see here, it come back that you can play with. So on Webflow, all this data is displayed nice and visually engaging manner. So this is the story for someone who wants to read this. Essentially, like there are some suspects, and here is the options for you. So you want to take a guess? Who could it be, Ben?
I feel like Bellatrix Lestrange is always a good guess,
Let's try it. Oh
and
no,
I
no.
was wrong.
Maybe let's just try. So this is the, we have made it very easy. It's not restrictive. So let's just try all the options. Okay, Draco Malfoy is the culprit here. But yeah, this is
I
kind of
should have known.
yeah. So I think this kind of feels simple, but that's actually a lot of things happening in the background. And then we'll go through them in detail, starting with BuildShip side. So before we dive into BuildShip, we'll just give an overview of what BuildShip can do. And then Ben, maybe you want to give an overview of what Webflow can do, and then we can dive into the exact game. So on BuildShip, it's a platform where you can build workflows. So essentially, you can build a quick API. You can even build an AI assistant or some event-driven app. If something happens, like a trigger on your third-party application, like Stripe payment comes in, or if a new contact gets added to HubSpot, or a new thing goes actually in your Webflow CMS, you can actually trigger a workflow. So if we see the simple example, what happens here is you get a bunch of inputs that you want to go into your workflow. So let's say a simple travel guide based on that. So I'm just asking to do it for me. It's a guided experience here, but essentially you can pass data from one thing to another, and you can also test your workflow. So if I give a travel plan for, say, Barcelona, let's see what it comes up with. So as you can see here, it's using OpenAI Node. We also have lots of integrations to almost all the tools out there. And if any integration is missing, you can actually generate the logic using AI. You can say, given a some kind of input, I want this logic to perform, and I want to return some kind of a thing here. And you can basically get a custom node for you. And as you can see here, it came back with some answer. Every node is testable, making sure your workflow works, and you can also test the entire workflow. And one of the things about BuildShip is we make the concept of building workflow very open. So you can start with this visual builder experience, but you can actually have access to the code of every single node. So here, as you can see, this is an OpenAI node, but we have like a proxied version of it. But if you have to say use the OpenAI node yourself, so text generator, you'll see that it's using the JavaScript kind of experience to call that API using your API key, all securely stored. So you can go fully at code level if you would want. You can generate nodes with AI, and you can make this workflow exactly what you want. And you have all the tools that you need typically, like log access, ability to connect to multiple APIs. So here we have REST API. You can connect to any other trigger. So same workflow can be triggered with multiple things, and just you can ship in one click and have it up and running. So that's overview of BuildShip. Ben, I guess like most people are familiar with Webflow, but in case you want to give a quick overview of Webflow and kind of high level good use cases, it'll be great.
Yeah, happy to chat about Webflow. Do you want to dive into the workflow first, or you want to just go about Webflow, talk about Webflow in general?
Yeah, so just Webflow in general, like for in case
Yeah.
someone is not aware of Webflow, I'm guessing there's a very small set of people, but yeah, it'd be good to get general overview of what Webflow is and what people can do with it.
Yeah, so Webflow is a visual development tool. So essentially, you can think of it as a way to build websites without having to write all the code. So you can, push things out onto the page, drag things onto the page, and build your site and build your front end. And what's really fun about it is it respects the rules of HTML and CSS. So one thing you might find different from other builders you've come across where you're like, oh, I'm going to just drag things absolutely wherever I want. Webflow, as you put things on the canvas, is going to follow the rules of HTML and CSS, since it's an abstraction of that. So the fun part about that is it writes really very clean semantic code on the background, and it allows you to really move at speed. So once you get the feel for it, then I found I was building a lot of sites from scratch with code, and I could build 3 or 4 sites in the time it took me to build one from scratch, which is great. I could just move very quickly. And then the other cool part about Webflow is you can actually, we're going to see today, you can bring custom code with you. Mm-hmm. So if you find there's something in Webflow you want to do that it doesn't have natively, great. You can absolutely bring code and still do that thing. And, it allows you to kind of push pixels right to the very edge and get things exactly where you want them, and build the experience that you want, and build responsive sites that are performant, and just truly a lot of fun to work in. And so if you're looking to build websites, you want to build a front end for something. To your point, Harini, some people are building like even like full on apps. I've built app type things in Webflow apps where I'm building the front end and tying them together. Tools like BuildShip and sort of making that go. And going hands on with BuildShip is a lot of fun, and so I'm excited to walk people through this.
Yeah.
Just I was impressed. There were a few things that impressed me. One of them was just like one of my favorite things that you have is the remix.
Yeah.
So Webflow has made in Webflow where like if you're like, oh, I want to build this, you can go look at the community and see people who built that, and then you can like you've got a clonable for this one, so you can clone it and take it and see like how was it done. And one of the things that really taught me the most was the ability to sort of reverse engineer sites in Webflow and go like, oh, that's how they did. Oh, that's creative. And I've loved getting to kind of remix some things and BuildShip and try to like figure out how people are doing things and looking at the flow. It's really cool. So I love that. And just the simple amount of integrations or the vast amount of integrations was just mind blowing to me. I really loved that and enjoyed just all the native connections. And as someone who still codes, I love that was still available to me too. So it's just such a fun platform and so cool.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I think I also really enjoy that flexibility on Webflow side where you can code if you want to go more custom. And I also like that the CMS on Webflow is super powerful. You have that API based access as well that makes it super valuable. I can actually show some interesting things we have done with that as well on Webflow and BuildShip. But yeah, let's dive into the thing that we are building today, the the workflow with the detective and things like that. So let me share my screen again quickly. So yeah, so here on the BuildShip side, so the thing that I was telling about is that you can connect to anything to create an API as a starting point. But if you were to, like, for example, we have Webflow trigger, which can allow you to receive updates from Webflow and start your workflow. So you can say that every time a CMS entry is done, or if your site is getting a published new version, you want to trigger a workflow, you can do that. But for the sake of today's session, we'll be keeping it very simple. We'll be doing a API based trigger where, given this API endpoint, so this one that gets created, we are using the get method. Every time this API is called, this workflow runs. Now let's look at the workflow itself. So the workflow has a very simple input. So you can add as many inputs you want to give to your workflow. This can come from the API. We are just using the string theme. And after that, what happens is here we are just generating a UID for it so that we maintain like a unique identifier for it. And then we are pretty much directly using OpenAI to instruct and prompt that, hey, so let's look at this prompt. So given a kind of theme, you want to, I think there's a typo here, given a theme, create a murder mystery with 3 suspects. The rules are that you will be creating a character, a narrative, an alibi, and write in first person. You can actually change this any way you want. Say, suppose you want to change to some other game. Let me actually make it a bit more
Can
zoomed in.
can you also show that like I love like when you hover over you get the AI
Yeah,
assistant there too. So even when you're putting this together, getting help from AI while you're building this, I
yeah,
thought was really cool too. Can you talk
yeah.
about how that works?
Yeah, so we have a couple of ways. So if you want to change this entire node logic, you can use AI to edit the node. But every time you enter a field, sometimes it gets confusing what I need to add. So we have like a tooltip to suggest what's happening. But if you want to say, for example, use AI to even generate this prompt to make it more comprehensive, you can use AI to do that. Or you can use AI to say, you can create like an expression here. So if this is text based, you can use JavaScript. But if you don't know how to code in JavaScript, you can actually ask AI to create that script for you. You can say that if this value is greater than this, then do this kind of logic as well. So it's a complete flexibility. So maybe I'll show it in a different example here. So for example, here we have um, a way for you to pass in the variable, and you're getting the prompt from here. So you're taking the data from previous node, and you can actually extract. It's a autocomplete kind of an editor. And here, if you're not sure, say, suppose you want to do further logic updates, you can actually use AI here. So let me actually not mess up this workflow. Let me show you in this quick API what it means. say for example, you have this text generator, and if you were to add like an empty node, or let's say, actually, let me say the prompt, we can say something like, given if the plan text is greater than 10 characters, then use the prompt hello, or something like that. I'm just like doing something random. You can also see what the response would be, tweak it further before you apply it. So here you can see it generated the logic for you, and you can change this, and you can then accept your change. So that way what happens is, in your field, you got the value helped with AI. So AI is available as a way for you to fill everything, or generate the node itself, or change the logic of existing thing. So we kind of place it in a way that makes sense. Yeah.
That's
So
so awesome.
yeah. So let's go back to that workflow. So yeah, so far we have the theme, we have the game ID, and then what we are gonna do now is got the game plan. So if you are not sure about anything till now, if you want to just specifically test a specific node, you can do that and make sure it's working fine before you proceed to the next one. And then let's also get rid of this for now. So here we have this node called parallel. So we can do a bunch of things parallelly to optimize for time and efficiency, right? So once we have the theme and the input and the suspects, we can generate like a victim image, and we can go through in loops. So you have all the programming kind of nodes available for you. We have parallel, loop, switch, repeat, and whatnot. So branch and so on. So in parallelly, we are doing generation of victim images. So if I look at this prompt, we are using the replicate node here, and we are doing the victim dot character illustration prompt. So there is, in the output here, you can see that every victim has a character illustration, which is like, this character is Cedric Diggory, he is looking like this, and so on. So that replicate then can use that description as the prompt for generating images that matches the victim, for example. So that's what's happening here. And the generated output from replicate is also uploaded into our local storage, so you can use it repeatedly, because replicate now doesn't give a storage that is persistent, right? Like you want your apps images to be available for your users for a long time, not like disappear. So that's one thing. And then another thing that we are doing parallelly is going through the suspects loop. So if I go to the suspects data here, you can see that, so let me zoom in a bit more. So you can see that every suspect has like a bio, if that person is a murderer or not, their name, and so on. So inside this loop, we are also generating images for suspects and uploading that as well. So because all these things are happening parallelly, it's much faster than if you were to do it, one at a time. In addition, we are also doing this logic here where we are using BuildShip's native database. So BuildShip comes with a built-in database. It's available here. It's similar to like a table kind of a structure. You can use any other database if you don't want to use the BuildShip database, but here all that is doing is storing that game and the ID for the sake of like keeping track of how many games are generated, what ID, and so on. This is not necessarily used here in the front end on Webflow. And then we are also trying to generate this mega cover image. So what you see in the background, like something based on the theme. So that's also again using replicate. You can actually look at a node and look at more details about it. So if you are not sure inside replicate node what model it is using, you can actually go into the node, see the settings. So it's using the flux model for generating the image. You can also change it if you want. There's additional settings if you want to change the aspect ratio or the output format and things like that. But yeah, so here finally it's generating the cover image and uploading that as well to storage. We are actually making this much more easier where it's automatically uploading to storage, so you don't need an additional step. But for now, this kind of works. If you were to generate beyond the game assets of images, if you want to generate audio, it's super easy to do as well. So you'll just come in here, you'll just do something called 11 labs API or any audio generation API, you have text to speech. So whatever the thing is being said here in the text format, it can be in the audio format. If you use this node and simply give the text, and the text you would give here is similar to here, which is the game's prompt. You'll just pass the data from one node to another. So if I were to give here, I'll just pass the variable, right? So I'll go to the game JSON, the big JSON list, and for, say, I want to generate for the suspects array, I want to loop through it, but I don't know how to do it. I can just ask the AI here to loop through suspects array and get, we can look at the game JSON again and actually edit that data. So we can say loop through suspects array and use the field prompt to and aggregate the prompts, maybe something like that. So if you want to do combine all the suspects text, right, like aggregate the prompts, let's see what it generates. But essentially you can give your logic here if you're not sure how to parse through loop, for example. So here it just generates the text for the suspects. You can give some name, and then what it does is generate the file for you. You can also upload the file. So that way what you're doing here is plugging in the logic whatever you want in between the steps, and finally you're aggregating all the output from the parallel nodes. So
Can I ask one question here?
yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about this? Because I found this element or this node really awesome.
Mhm.
The parallel node.
Yeah.
And then can you talk about like paths, if like logic, if this then that, or and then parallel, and kind of how to think about both of those things?
Yeah. So we have, so similar to how a programmer would do, we want to introduce same concepts to visual programming. So if I were to add like parallel node, you can essentially, in compute terms, it actually runs at the same time. It's not like waiting for this flow to finish before another flow. So if I were to create one sequence for AI node generator and then another sequence for, say, replicate image generation, right? What's happening is both things are happening at the same time. So you can have any number of sequences here. You can also move things around from one sequence to another. So this is allowing you to save time. So if you have all the information you need to run these two independently, you can use the parallel node. But in certain cases, if it has some dependency, so only after this text is generated, you are able to generate the image, then you would actually have them in the same sequence. Is that answering the question?
No, that's great. I thought the parallel node was incredible.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and then we have that the same thing, but like a switch node. We also have recently a AI switch node, which is interesting because you can have the same logic of switch, but let AI generate the or decide which path to take, rather than you having to strictly define if then else with like formatted text, right? Like for example, if I have a text saying hello world, right, and you want to say take this path if the path if this string length is less than 10, then you can have another path if it's less than 20, and then the fallback path, right? And then you can actually just log it to console. Log to console. Let's just say 10, something like that. And then what it does is, we didn't actually define dot length equals or less than or equal to 10 and so on. It's actually deciding based on what it assumes. So the fallback path, let's just say random foo. So if I were to like test out this node, hopefully it's saying this middle one. Yeah, it's this one extra space here. So yeah, so it's saying, oh, I think it, let's just type more. Okay, so the first thing that matches is so it should hopefully say the second thing. So yeah, now it says class 2. So yeah, essentially you can build your logic here. And even if someone is not a developer, can use this. And if someone is a developer, it's easier to grasp this.
Thanks so much.
Cool. So yeah, I think let's go back to that workflow. We pretty much covered everything. I think if anything is not clear, someone can just, click play on every individual node. This workflow is also available as a template. We'll share that as well below the video in description. So essentially all that nodes are generating bunch of things, and obviously we want to return that as the output. So they are aggregating back all the fields. So from the game title, we are taking that. We are from the game JSON, we're taking the introduction. From the node, the replicate node, the victim and the image that got uploaded. So this upload victim image, that one we are sending back. We are sending the suspect's image, we are sending back the cover image. So whenever you add a field, for example, if I add another output, say a custom one called string, all that you can do is pass variables from other things. So you can, for example, it suggests things for you. You can go into the individual input itself. Say, suppose you want to send back the theme again, or if you want to use one of the fields in the generated notes, you can just scroll through them and figure out from the note. So if it's the upload file, it's the download URLs, and you can pass that back here. So let me just get rid of this for now. Yeah, and when you're done with the changes, you basically just ship. And when you ship, I've already shipped this, so you get this API URL that you can start using immediately on any app that you're building, like on Webflow. So if I copy this over, that's what we'll be using on Webflow side. So I think there's a lot here, and you can do. But let's jump into the Webflow side, Ben, and now maybe showcase the app, how this is being built, and talk a bit about that.
Yeah. So we talked about Webflow visual development platform, and as of last year, Webflow website experience platform. We even have optimization now, which I'm pretty pumped about. So lots you can do here, but let's dive in to see like, okay, what's happening in Webflow and how is this built? So let's dive into this project. So you can see inside of Webflow, if you've never used it before, left-hand side here, we have some of our different panels that let us add elements to the page, switch between pages. You actually see we get a navigator here, so we can see like the tree on the canvas or on the DOM, like of the elements that are here. And then on the right-hand side is where we style and grab our settings and do all of that work. Well, when we dive in here, you can see the team has put together this really great page, but it's just got a simple form here. And on the form, there's some IDs here for these for the input. And of course, there's a submit button. And then there's custom code that drives the rest of this. So when we talked about that flexibility inside of BuildShip that lets I can use that visual editor, or I can write the code. The same is true here in Webflow. And so, we can build visually by adding elements on the page, which is what happened here, and then styled with classes and all the fun stuff. But also, if we dive into the page settings for this project, and there is a link for this too, so you'll be able to grab a copy of this and dive in and check this out. If we go to the page settings and we scroll down to the before body area here, you'll notice there's custom code that's driving this. And so basically what it's doing is it's adding a click listener to the button. And then you can see this is that URL that Harini was mentioning right here. So this is that endpoint. Again, this could trigger it, or like you could have lots of things trigger it. So if you wanted to catch a Webflow like they submit the form and catch it on the back end, and maybe you email them content, you could do that too, right? Like, and it could run off of something different there instead of this. But in this way, we're saying we're using this URL from the front end to reach out to BuildShip and say, okay, here's some information. And so passing all of this information on. And then it's hides some buttons and shows some processing text. So because it does take some time, it's sort of like a loading state, right? Like while this is happening, while the process is happening, just hang out with this. So hide the button so the user can't submit it, 5 times in a row. You want to submit it and then show that loading state. And then essentially we're doing a fetch, and we're fetching to this URL and passing through that theme that you shared with BuildShip. So where there was that theme input inside of BuildShip before, that's what gets passed through. And then we're taking that, and you can see what's happening is setting that data in local storage. So we're saving it into the browser's storage locally. And then you can see here, moving over to another window /case. So just navigating to a different page. And then there is some logic here to catch an error in case there were any errors, and we can handle those. But we're moving to a different page. So basically all that's happening is we enter our content or our theme into this. When we hit submit, basically stopping the default process of the form submitting, hiding that, and then hitting BuildShip with that theme, and then storing that locally into the browser's local storage.
Yeah, I think that what's interesting here is there's also the native API calling on buttons that I've seen on the form, but I think that is more like if you want to just send off a webhook somewhere to do something, right? Like there is that option on the right side. Yeah. So, and
Yeah,
then,
you can I actually did this today. I posted, so if you, the way Webflow works is if I were to put something in here, and of course this is not destructive, this won't stay, but somedomain.com, or if I had a BuildShip domain in here, right? As soon as I put something in here, Webflow no longer processes the form. And
okay.
it just gets passed to that endpoint. So BuildShip, I actually saw like there is a way to sort of just catch this, and I played with that and did some of that too, which was really fun. I thought that was really cool. So you could do that as well if you're like, hey, I just want to pass this over to BuildShip through the form submission. You could do that too. Webflow forms, if there's nothing there, Webflow will process it. And in the back end, we have the ability at Webflow to send webhooks. So we'll deliver all that data. So if you're like, hey, I'm going to process in the background, and then like maybe I had to share an email, and you wanted to send an email with all of this or something, you could do all of that too. Or if this was tied to some user account, you could save that to my user and I could access it later. You do all kinds of fun things that you can do here.
Yeah.
But in this case, we're doing it from the front end. Right?
Yeah, so I like that there is that flexibility that you can use like a webhook URL directly. So in BuildShip, if you build like an API that processes, say someone is like a lead qualifier, and on Webflow you have like a form that asks for people to sign up for your new app, for example, and then you can trigger that very easily. You don't need to do custom code, but on this use case, because we are making changes on the the Webflow app, like how it looks and feels, then the custom code flexibility is useful. So yeah.
And I was just going to show for folks who might be interested in Webflow, if you go to your site settings to apps and integrations, you can generate API tokens here, but there is also the ability to add a webhook, and you can choose your type. So form submission and share where you want that webhook to be delivered and pass that through. So when forms are submitted, it gets passed. So if you wanted to pass that through to a BuildShip URL, you absolutely could.
Cool. Yeah. So on this page, the home page, the custom code that you were showing, Ben, so it's taking the API, making that call, and it's kind of like in disabling all the buttons in that meantime. Can you also talk a bit about the redirect? Like once the data comes back from the API, what's happening?
Yeah, once the data comes back, if you've never played in a browser if you go to inspect, one of the really cool things down here is you have access to lots of things, but one of these is application, and one of these is actually local storage. And so you can actually see where I've played this game before. It's storing this data here, and now I have access to it. If I'm back on this site, this data is going to persist. And so there's session storage for my session that I'm here. There's local storage that's going to stay until I cleared cache and cookies, right? So this is a really fun, safe way to kind of store some data and reuse it. So what happens is the API from BuildShip, this is what comes back from BuildShip. We get a URL for the cover image, which is going to be on the next page. We can see like the intro is here, and then we get our array of suspects. So we get all of those. that are passed through here, and then we get a title, the victim, and all of that information. And it's all stored locally. This is all information that we're going to use. So it's coming back and it's storing that locally. And then the next thing that it's doing is it's pushing us to the case page. So when we look at the case page is built in Webflow, and you can see there are some elements that are set here. They have IDs or attributes so that we can target them, right? And everything is built and styled, and you may notice like, hey, this kind of looks sort of empty, and that's by default or by design, right? So what happens is once we get to this page, if we jump into the custom code here, so if we go to that page settings and we scroll down and look at the JavaScript here, you'll notice that, hey, we have some more code here. And one of these things is the API response. We're saying we're parsing the JSON that got stored in local storage. So we're just pulling that back out and getting it. So everything that was returned from BuildShip, now we have access to it. And then basically we have a function here that's populating the page content. So what it's doing is it's looking to get the element by ID, the title, and it's going to pass the title for this mystery through. So in Webflow, I can select an element and I can give it an ID. So you can see here, this is where the title goes, right? And it maps all the way down the page. So it's going to put in who was the victim and the victim's description. It's going to put in all of our suspects. We have one card, but it's going to make sure we have 3 for all 3 suspects. And it's also going to give us a little bit more around the logic. So you can see actually at the bottom, we are selecting these radios. So selected murderer is here. And then, we are checking whether someone is the murderer or not. And it's telling you whether it's correct or wrong. So matching that logic. And all of this is happening here in JavaScript on this end.
Yeah, and I think that the interesting thing here is if someone is not familiar with code, you can just take the whole thing and give it to ChatGPT or something like that, and then ask for it to generate JavaScript code. You can put it back. You can have many elements with different IDs, and you can say that my JSON from API looks like this. You can just dump it, and I want my ID on Webflow JavaScript to be mapped like this, and it kind of generates it. You can literally paste it, and you can try it out. I think that's the easy part. And if we clone this template, right, Ben, it will come with the code, so you can also
That's right.
play around and learn it like that. But it's interesting that you're taking every ID and replacing it with the data that came from the JSON, right? And you're
That's
also
right.
you have like a sample card for the suspect, and you're just cloning it multiple times to create with the suspect information that comes from the API. Same for that radio box, you're changing the field with the options. And then when someone makes a choice and clicks the button, I guess you have like a on-click listener for that button ID. And then that one is matching if the incoming input and what the user selected is matching, or is it a wrong selection. And
That's
all
right.
this, yeah. And I think even if someone is not familiar with code, the interesting thing here is because there's a lot of connection here with ID and the field name, you can make that read through it and try to understand, and it's kind of like easy to manage overall.
Yeah, and can I share a couple other things that might be tools that might be helpful when you're writing code?
Yeah, sure.
If that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
So one thing that is sort of a hot item now is Cursor as an IDE. So it's really cool. You can download it. It's a lot like it's VS Code, but you have this AI agent that helps you write code, and it literally puts the code on the page, and it does sort of like a GitHub diff. It shows you this is new, this is what's getting removed, this is what's modified. Really great tool. Also, there is an app that was built by someone in our community called Slater, Slater.app, that is great, and it's actually built it uses AI to write code for you, and it helps you connect that code to Webflow. So you can you can write the code inside the Slater app, and then it gives you like a snippet to copy, and then it helps you keep everything up to date. And so if you were trying to write this code, it could help you write that code if you need it. And just a really great, helpful little tool to make sure that, if you're like, oh, hey, I don't know how to write code. or even if you're one of those people who are like, I dabble in it, I'm a little dangerous, but
Yeah.
I need a little help. It can be a really great tool to kind of help get things over the finish line.
Yeah, and even if you like you forget the syntax of how to do loops, right? Like
Totally,
those kind of easy to use.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say one of my favorite things that I saw in this code that I really liked was the clone node. It is something that I do a lot with Webflow. So here's kind of a fun sort of way to I'll just share some cheat codes with Webflow in custom code, which is the clone node is really awesome. I built a greenhouse job board example,
Mm-hmm.
and basically it allows you to style the element in Webflow, so you don't have to write the code to do
Yeah.
it, and it just clones it and passes the data through instead of document create element. I can just
Yeah.
use Webflow to build it visually and copy it. The other thing that I see people do that I think is really smart, and I do it myself, is if I need an element that gets created by JavaScript, to be able to right click on an element and hit inspect and just grab that div that I styled visually, and then
Yeah.
I can copy the element in the inspector and I can paste that into my code that gets built. And then I can just take this element that's on this page and stick it on a hidden page
Mm.
so that I can still style it and change it. So if I wanted to change the font size or whatever, I don't have to go back to the code. It's used the same in classes or whatever. So it's just a way for me to kind of steal some of those elements when it comes to like passing elements through to dynamic things like that, or building it. You look at that code, you're like, oh, that's a lot of code. Just the sort of ways that you can kind of shortcut around and make it a little bit easier with Webflow.
Yeah, I love that actually because you can think styling visually in this like seeing how it looks is much better than like just writing CSS or something. And also, I think
Yes.
I like the fact that you can create the card or something like that that you can clone, but hide it away and keep it
Yep.
visible if you need to, and bring it up and down as you need. So, yeah, that awesome. That's super cool. Um,
And can I just say one other thing that I
yeah,
really
yeah,
love about all of this? So like when you build in Webflow a lot, one of the things that you notice in Webflow is that there is no so Webflow lets you do a whole lot. Like I said, there's the visual development. There is there's besides the visual development, there's that optimize, analyze. We have localization. There's a lot of things, but the one thing that we really don't have is this API building endpoint or this backend logic, right? And so, having a tool like this, where I think one of the things that you said was really awesome. I get this API endpoint that I can put inside of Webflow and I can hit from Webflow, but BuildShip stores all of my API keys for me and keeps them
yeah,
safe and confidential. I don't have to worry about all of those other things. It just makes life a whole lot easier. And so, like, if you're wanting to pull data from like an Airtable, or you wanting to push data to something like an Airtable, that's a big thing in the Webflow community. A lot of people do.
mm,
You can do that. And I think the other cool thing that I will say about BuildShip that I did want to just call out too, that when we're talking about BuildShip and Webflow, is when you go into BuildShip, and I'll just go to my test flow so I don't mess with this flow here. But if I hit add a node, and let's go down to all the integrations. And if you look at Webflow, my gosh, look at all of the endpoints here that are available. This is so cool. So even if it's not front end, but you're like, hey, I have data that sits over in this database and I want to sync it with Webflow in the CMS, being able to take that data, enrich it with AI, and then put it into Webflow is such a cool cheat code.
yeah.
And BuildShip really just makes that so powerful to like kind of move things back and forth, even behind the scenes. So I don't know. I love that too. Like when I was digging through here, not just Webflow, lots of tools and lots of tools that people in the Webflow community, I'm sure in your community, the maker community, that people really use these over and over, like Google Sheets and all those different pieces that people rely on a lot, where it's like, oh, I've already got all this data here, and if I could just get this into Webflow. So just super cool. I love this, and I just think it's really awesome.
Awesome. Great to hear. Yeah, I think like the CMS case you mentioned, what we've seen some powerful use cases where someone just uploads in, for example, if they're writing a blog, they have the blog content on CMS, but the cover image and the audio reading of the entire blog is also created on BuildShip and then put back into the CMS as a option like a downloadable URL, and then it gets published as part of the CMS pages, right? Like that is super cool where you just care about a little bit of things and then rest of the ancillary or things gets automatically generated. Um,
Or to your example you shared earlier, like a big thing for personally for me, I build a site, I want it to be accessible to everybody. And okay,
yeah,
I've got a bunch of blog posts, I can create audio files off of those, and then I could store those and link to them so people could listen to my blog post instead of just reading my blog post or listen to a summary or description of, like, how cool is that?
yeah.
So
So language, I guess you can translate all sorts of
that's
languages.
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, so that is really good for accessibility for sure. Um, yeah, I think that's cool. I think you were showing something else you were trying to build. If you wanna, what? Yeah, I think maybe
Oh,
we uh, did
I
we. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying I did build as I was poking around, one of the things that I wanted to show or just built, we don't have to walk through, was just a really simple flow,
Mhm.
which was just the ability to pass like a suit. So like we're talking cards here, so diamonds, hearts, spades, clubs through, and then I provided this instruction that would say, hey, give me a card out of the deck, and then generate an image for that card and then return it on the front end so I could hit a button and it would just give me a card, which I thought was pretty fun. So there's like a lot of really just simple things that you can do too. If you're thinking about making simple games, like you could see how easy it would be to uh, build small card games or logic games, all kinds, and just add really fun interactivity to the front end of your Webflow site. And really, um, I think it's those sorts of things that provide that sort of wow factor, that shine to a site, that really make it,
Mm.
take it to the next level, to where people are like, oh, that's so cool. I wish I needed that on my site, right? Like, just taking it to that next step or that next level. So
Yeah,
so much fun playing around. And what I found was, like, even like the REST API call, like I did something similar where I had an endpoint, and I'm posting to it, and then I'm getting my response. And I even thought, the really, like, getting the latest request, this was really cool for troubleshooting,
yeah,
because at first I did it wrong. And what I thought was really cool is being able to come through and say, like, hey, this is what the input needs to be, and passing that through. Just some of the really nice little touches that just made it so simple to set this up, even though I know sometimes people see things like this, they're like, oh, this is a little scary or intimidating. Just the way you and the team have sort of made this easy, I think, is pretty neat. So
that's great to hear. I'll pass on the compliments to the product design team. Yeah, we did like a bunch of rehaul around trigger to make it much easier to use. You can use multiple triggers for the same workflow as well, because sometimes you might need to call it when some event happens. Sometimes with the API, like that's something we see is interesting as well. Yeah, I think so. To kind of wrap up the kind of flow on the Webflow side, once the data comes in, we kind of show all the things. And is there anything else people need to do before? Like, I guess they just publish, you get the test website for playing around with.
that's
Is
right.
there, yeah, anything else that people need to take care of in the
Well, I
end?
would say, just like BuildShip, Webflow has a pretty. Let me just open up this site again. So if I open the site, Webflow has a one-click to publish.
Mhm.
So once you kind of got things where you want it, it's just as easy as click and publish, and then that's going to be live.
Yeah,
And I would just encourage people to remix both of these things, like really dig into that BuildShip workflow, and check out the nodes. What are they doing? What can you do to get creative with it? Like, what do you want to build? And then remixing on the Webflow side, and checking out tools like Cursor or Slater. And I would say that I think the other cool thing about this community, the maker community who relies on a lot of these tools, is just how supportive people are for one another. So wherever you're at and on socials, reaching out to folks and just asking for help, and not being scared, and diving in and learning, and then show us what you built in this hackathon. I'm excited to see what comes out of this and what people make.
yeah, exactly. So I think we are so. If someone is not familiar, we are running a hackathon with combination of Webflow and BuildShip. So I just shared the link in the chat as well, so you can take a look. The deadline, we have extended it to February 15th. We have a bunch of templates. Today's session also will be available as a template. And what we are looking actually as a general judging criteria is not just the best technical use of the two products to showcase something, but also general creativity and innovation. And of course, making sure that what you're building is functioning without glitches and errors. And also the kind of the final category that we are testing is how practical and useful this is for real world, as well as another kind of category beyond the creativity. So it could be fun, creative, something unique in using certain AI technologies, or something more practical in a business use case, or something that leads to real world impact. So these are the kind of different areas in the judging criteria. I share the link where you can look at in more detail what the prices are, what is the kind of things you need to submit. We also have like special swag of Webflow and BuildShip for the winners, and also the participants. The top 50 submissions can, are getting swag and so on. So yeah, we would love to see what creative things you build, and we're looking forward to being more available. We are actually also doing but in bunch of office hours, so in case you have questions, you can join our Discord. I'll just pop that in. um, yeah, and I think the Webflow community also is pretty good. You can check out there if you need any help from Webflow side. Does Webflow have a community on Discord, or where is the community based?
Yeah, maybe because I'm already a member, but if you search Webflow Discord, it
Yeah.
should be like the top result there.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, we communities everywhere. I feel like
Yeah.
between the forums and Discord and Reddit, and kind of all over the place. So
Yeah. Which is the official one? I guess like a lot of unofficial communities also there, but yeah. um, cool. So I think I joined the Webflow Discord as well. So yeah, join us in different places, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. As Ben said, we are available on all these mediums, and I'm looking forward to seeing what people are building. Cool. I think there are a bunch of questions on the Q&A. We addressed the community section and also the questions. So if there are more questions, yeah, this will be recorded and available on YouTube. You can watch it on BuildShip's channel. Um, Anything else? I think that's kind of majorly what it covers. And first of all, thanks, Ben, for making the time for this session. It's super awesome. I enjoyed this. Any last parting words?
I just wanted to thank you for putting this together and for having me, and I really super appreciate it. And I'm glad that we could kind of show off how to integrate both of these tools. And I'm excited to see what people build.
Yeah, same here. And yeah, thanks for this, because I think we also published on the BuildShip is available in the Webflow marketplace as well as an app. So in case someone wants to integrate that style, we also publish a bunch of nodes, as you said. So if anything is missing, or if someone is trying to build something and wants more help, we are available both via office hours and in Discord. Awesome. Thanks, Ben.
All right.
Great rest of your day. All
Yeah,
right.
you too. Thank you so much.